When I attended my cousin's wedding, my seat was in the basement. MIL smirked. Only close family gets a table. Worse, there was no place card for me. Cousin giggled. Guess you don't count. I stood up, took my gift, and said, then I'm leaving. Cousin went pale. I, 32M, never thought family drama could get this petty, but here we are. My cousin was getting married last weekend, and what should have been a celebration turned into the most humiliating experience of my life. Well, almost. Because what happened next made it all worth it. Let me back up. My cousin and I grew up together, practically siblings since our moms are twins. We spent every summer at our grandparents' house, built forts, shared secrets, the whole childhood bond thing. But somewhere along the way, things shifted. Maybe it was when I got into a better college, or when I landed my job at the tech company, or when I bought my house before she did. Small jealousies that I thought we'd moved past. Her mother-in-law never liked me. Not sure why. But from the moment I met her 3 years ago, she treated me like I was some distant acquaintance rather than family. Cold smiles, forgotten invitations, the works. My cousin always made excuses for her, saying she was just protective of her son. The wedding invitation came 2 months ago. Standard stuff, pretty venue, evening ceremony. I was genuinely happy for her and spent considerable time picking out a gift from their registry. Not just any gift either. I went big. A high-end kitchen appliance set worth nearly $800 because I wanted to show that despite any weirdness, I cared about her happiness. The morning of the wedding, I got dressed in my best suit, grabbed the elegantly wrapped gift, and drove 3 hours to the venue. Beautiful place, honestly. Historic mansion with sprawling gardens, the kind of spot that costs a fortune to book. I arrived during the cocktail hour, fashionably on time. That's when things started going sideways. I approached the reception area where everyone was mingling, champagne glasses in hand, looking for familiar faces. Found a few relatives who seemed surprised to see me, which was odd. My aunt gave me a weird look and asked if I was sure I was supposed to be there. I laughed it off, figuring she was confused about something. The ceremony was beautiful. My cousin looked radiant. Her new husband seemed genuinely happy, and despite everything, I felt that warm family pride watching her walk down the aisle. I took pictures, clapped at the right moments, even teared up a little during the vows. This was family, after all. After the ceremony, everyone filtered into the reception hall for dinner. This was a fancy affair, assigned seating with little place cards, multiple courses, the works. I found the seating chart and started looking for my name. Main tables for immediate family, secondary tables for extended relatives and close friends, and then, nothing. My name wasn't there. I checked again, thinking I'd missed it. Ran my finger down every table listing twice. Nothing. A cold feeling started creeping up my spine. I approached one of the wedding coordinators and explained that I couldn't find my seat assignment. She checked her list, frowned, and said there must be some mistake. She'd go ask the bride. While waiting, I watched everyone else finding their seats, chatting and laughing as they settled in for dinner. The main tables were filled with both sides of the family. Aunts, uncles, cousins, even some family friends I recognized. I stood there holding my expensive gift, feeling increasingly awkward and out of place. The coordinator came back with my cousin's mother-in-law in tow. The woman had this smug expression that immediately put me on guard. She looked me up and down like I was something unpleasant she'd stepped in and told me there had been a space issue. Too many RSVPs, not enough room at the main tables. Only close family gets a table, she said with a smirk that made my blood boil. But they'd found a solution, she continued. There was space downstairs in the basement where they'd set up an overflow area. Some folding chairs, a small table, very cozy. A few other people who weren't quite family would be eating down there too. I felt my face burning. The basement, at a family wedding. For overflow guests who weren't quite family. After driving 3 hours with an $800 gift, I was being relegated to eat in the basement like some uninvited crasher. I asked to speak with my cousin directly. The mother-in-law's smirk widened as she went to get the bride. My cousin appeared a few minutes later, looking slightly flustered in her wedding dress. When I explained the situation, she had the audacity to giggle. Actually giggle. She said she guessed I just didn't count as close enough family for the main reception area. The words hit like a slap. Didn't count. After growing up together, after all those summers, after genuinely caring about her happiness, I didn't count as close enough family. The casual cruelty of it, delivered with a laugh on her wedding day, was breathtaking. I stood there for a moment, processing what had just happened. Around me, the reception was in full swing. Family members I'd known my entire life were settling into their assigned seats, none of them seeming to notice or care that I was being banished to the basement. The bride was already turning away, apparently considering the matter settled. That's when something clicked. I'd driven 3 hours to be here. I'd bought an expensive gift. I'd taken time off work, gotten dressed up, and genuinely looked forward to celebrating with family. And this was how I was being treated. Like an afterthought. Like someone who didn't matter. I walked calmly to the gift table and picked up my elegantly wrapped package. The action caught my cousin's attention, and she turned back with a confused look. I told her that if I didn't count as close enough family for a proper seat, then I guessed I didn't count as close enough family to give wedding gifts either. Since I was leaving, the change in her expression was immediate and dramatic. The casual, dismissive attitude vanished, replaced by panic. She went pale under her wedding makeup and started stammering that it wasn't like that there had been a misunderstanding, that of course I was family. But it was too late. The damage was done, and more importantly, I was done. I told her I hoped she had a wonderful evening with her close family and started walking toward the exit. The mother-in-law tried to intercept me, suddenly much less smug and more desperate. She insisted it was just a space issue, that I was overreacting, that surely we could work something out. But her tone had completely changed from smugly dismissive to almost pleading. Other family members were starting to notice the commotion. My aunt rushed over asking what was wrong. Why was I leaving? When I explained the basement situation, her jaw dropped. She had no idea, she said. None of the family knew I'd been relegated to overflow seating. My cousin was now crying, makeup starting to run, desperately trying to convince me to stay. The coordinator appeared with a solution. They could squeeze in an extra chair at one of the family tables. It would be tight, but they'd make it work. I looked around at all the faces staring at me. Family members who suddenly seemed very interested in making sure I felt welcome. A bride whose perfect day was rapidly falling apart. And a mother-in-law who had gone from smug superiority to obvious panic. The thing is, it wasn't about the seating anymore. It was about respect. About being valued. About not letting people treat you like garbage just because they think they can get away with it. I thanked them for the sudden concern, but said I'd made my decision. I had somewhere else to be. Somewhere I'd actually be appreciated. Which wasn't entirely true, but it sounded good. Walking out of that venue with my gift tucked under my arm was one of the most liberating moments of my life. Behind me, I could hear raised voices, family members demanding explanations, and what sounded like the start of a major family argument. I drove home, changed into comfortable clothes, and ordered pizza. Best Saturday night I'd had in months. Update 1. The fallout began Sunday morning. My phone started ringing around 9 a.m. and didn't stop for hours. First it was my aunt, then my uncle, then my mother, then relatives I hadn't heard from in years. Word had spread through the family faster than wildfire. Turns out, after I left, the wedding reception turned into a complete disaster. Family members who learned about the basement seating were horrified. My aunt confronted the mother-in-law publicly, demanding to know who gave her the authority to decide which family members were close enough for proper seating. The bride spent most of her reception crying in the bathroom while family members argued in the hallway. The mother-in-law kept insisting it was just a space issue, but when pressed for details, her story fell apart. Turns out there were plenty of empty seats. She'd just decided on her own that I didn't deserve one of them. Several family members left early in solidarity. My uncle said it was the most uncomfortable wedding he'd ever attended, and that's saying something considering our family's track record. My cousin called me Sunday afternoon, voice hoarse from crying. She apologized repeatedly, saying she had no idea her mother-in-law had been planning this. She claimed she thought I just hadn't responded to the invitation and was showing up as a surprise guest, which was why she went along with the basement plan. I let her talk for a while before pointing out that even if that were true, the correct response would have been to find me a proper seat, not banish me to the basement. And the giggling about me not counting as family, that was all her. She got quiet after that, eventually admitted that her mother-in-law had been filling her head with complaints about me for months. How I was always showing off my success, how I looked down on them, how I probably thought I was better than everyone else. She said she'd started to believe it, and that's why she went along with the seating arrangement. I asked her when I had ever shown off or acted superior. When had I ever done anything but support her and celebrate her achievements. She couldn't give me an answer. The gift situation became a whole other drama. My cousin asked if I was really keeping the kitchen set, since she'd already planned her kitchen around having it. I told her that she'd made it clear I wasn't close enough family to warrant proper treatment, so she shouldn't expect family-level gifts either. She started crying again and said she'd learned her lesson, that she was sorry, that family meant everything to her. I pointed out that if family really meant everything, she wouldn't have treated me like a stranger at her own wedding. Update 2. Monday brought even more drama. The mother-in-law called me directly, which was a first. She was furious, blaming me for ruining her son's wedding day. I was selfish and dramatic, she said. It was just seating arrangements, not the end of the world. I asked her to explain exactly why she thought I deserved basement seating while family friends got spots at main tables. She started going on about how I always acted like I was better than everyone, how I flaunted my success, how I made other people feel inferior just by existing. This was fascinating to me because I'd barely interacted with this woman over the years. Our conversations had been limited to polite small talk at family gatherings. I asked her for specific examples of when I'd acted superior or flaunted anything. She couldn't provide any. Just vague accusations about my attitude and how I made people feel. Finally, she admitted that she'd heard things from my cousin about how I'd supposedly changed, become arrogant and condescending. So I called my cousin back and asked her exactly what she'd been telling her mother-in-law about me. This conversation was enlightening in the worst possible way. Over the past few years, apparently, my cousin had been feeding her future mother-in-law a steady stream of complaints about me. How I'd gotten too big for my britches after getting my job. How I acted like I was smarter than everyone else. How I probably looked down on their more modest lifestyle. None of this was based on anything I'd actually said or done. It was all assumption and insecurity on my cousin's part, shared with someone who was already predisposed to dislike me. Together, they'd built up this narrative where I was the arrogant family member who needed to be taken down a peg. The basement seating wasn't a space issue or a mistake. It was a deliberate humiliation designed to put me in my place. They'd planned it in advance, counting on me being too polite to cause a scene at a wedding. What they hadn't counted on was me having enough self-respect to walk away. I told my cousin that her apologies weren't worth much when I now knew this had been a coordinated effort to humiliate me. She claimed she never meant for it to go that far, that she just vented sometimes, and her mother-in-law took it too seriously. But the damage was done. The relationship I'd thought we had was apparently one-sided. While I'd been genuinely happy for her successes and supportive of her choices, she'd been resenting mine and trash-talking me to her new family. Update 3. The rest of the family took sides, as families do. Most were appalled by the basement situation and supported my decision to leave. A few thought I should have sucked it up for the sake of family harmony, but they were in the minority. My aunt organized a family dinner the following weekend, pointedly not inviting my cousin or her new mother-in-law. It was supposed to be a show of support, but honestly, it just made me sad. Family gatherings shouldn't require taking sides. My cousin's new marriage was already showing strain. Her husband was reportedly furious with his mother for creating the drama and embarrassed by the whole situation. Several of his family members had also left the reception early, disgusted by how his mother had treated me. The expensive gift became a symbol of the whole mess. My cousin kept asking family members to convince me to give it to her anyway, since she really needed those kitchen appliances. I ended up returning it to the store and donating the money to charity instead. Felt better than letting it sit in my closet. What really got to me was learning how long this resentment had been building. Looking back over the past few years, I could see signs I'd missed. Comments that seemed off at the time, but I'd brushed aside. Invitations that came late or not at all. A gradual cooling that I'd attributed to natural life changes as we both got older and busier. She'd been pulling away from me while simultaneously complaining about me to others, creating distance and then resenting me for not bridging it. It was a level of passive-aggressive dysfunction that I honestly hadn't thought my cousin was capable of. The mother-in-law sent a final text message accusing me of destroying a young marriage and tearing apart a family over petty grievances. I didn't respond. Some people will never understand that respect isn't optional, even at family events. Final update. It's been 3 months now, and the dust has mostly settled. My cousin and I haven't spoken since that last phone call. The family has largely moved on, though holiday planning is going to be awkward for a while. I learned some valuable lessons about family dynamics and self-respect. Sometimes people who claim to love you are harboring resentments you never knew existed. Sometimes standing up for yourself means accepting that relationships weren't what you thought they were. The wedding incident wasn't really about seating arrangements. It was about how people choose to treat each other when they think they can get away with it. It was about whether I was going to accept being disrespected just to keep the peace. I chose not to accept it, and I don't regret that decision. My cousin learned that actions have consequences, and that family relationships require mutual respect to survive. As for the kitchen appliances, I heard through the family grapevine that she finally bought her own set with wedding money. Apparently, they worked just fine, though she reportedly complained that they weren't as nice as the ones I'd originally picked out. Some lessons are expensive, but they're still worth learning.